This episode, I really, really want to talk about something that I know you all want to know about, and that is the origin of the 40 Social Club. Like, where did this even come from? This even happen? Why are us three men right here trying to encourage other Black men that are in their 40s and that we know a little bit about being 40 and 50? I mean, come on. I'm pretty sure they need to know and they want to know, and we are going to give it to you right here in this episode.
Welcome one and all to another edition of the 4050 Social Club. We're a virtual forum that focuses on Black men and on helpful and healthy ways for us to transition successfully from our 40s into our 50s and beyond. We aim to do this by presenting about a wide variety of topics, from health, wealth, and spirituality, to relationships, to our professional lives and continuing aspirations, to quite simply and honestly just being a great human. As I've shared on several occasions, I wish there had been platforms like 4050 around when I was approaching and beginning to evolve into and through this particular life period. So we hope that you'll engage with us on this podcast as we add to the growing movement to support and to honor Black men. Jamian, our eagle-eyed visionary, Quest, our resident helper, and myself, CJ the Seeker, are excited to be here with you today for another injection of the 4050 Social Club. Let's get it.
Man, it's wonderful for us to be here and to be back with you. And as always, we love and enjoy all of the feedback that we've been getting. And I just want y'all to understand and know that we are going to take that feedback and transform the good things that we've seen and take time to really get a nice blend and mix of things that we can present to y'all. All right. Quest, have only been here for a short time, but I really want to talk to both of you about how this all came about. Like, how did y'all even come up with the name? But even before that, how did you come up with the concept of even wanting to have a 40 and 50 social club?
Yeah. So I'll take this one first, and then I'm going to toss it to Jay, because when you start asking about the name, he's the one who actually came up with the name. So I want to hear what he would have to say about that. So a handful of folks have asked me the same thing. So the story I'm about to share is really similar to everything I've been saying over the last couple of weeks anyway. So I was working at Kenyon College in the admissions office when Jamian was a student there. When I arrived, he was going into his sophomore year. They had a handful of Black kids there. I was there young, just a few years older than them. So we hung out a lot in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, which was real cool. Got to know each other really well. But interestingly, and Jamin, I'd be interested to hear what you say, because I think you'd probably be willing to say the exact same thing. Like, he and I were always cool, but we were never the two that would just hang out together, right? Like, we were always hanging out with other people, and we were with each other, and we talk and we do whatever. But we were never the two that would just kind of hang out on our own like that. I think it may have happened once or twice. It maybe even felt a little awkward, until somebody else walked in the room. But that's just kind of how our relationship was. So now you fast forward years, because we're talking like mid-90s right there, mid to late 90s. So fast forward to 2023, and I'm in Chicago, back home in Chicago. Our youngest daughter plays volleyball. Now she's playing in college, but then she was there playing in this tournament in suburban Chicago. I let some of the guys know I was going to be coming to town, because Jamian lives there now. And he's like, hey, where you're staying, I'm willing to come out there just to spend some time. We can have a drink. I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And again, we'd never really done that before.
Right.
He made that trip. I don't even know what. We were in Schaumburg or Streamwood. I don't know. We were somewhere way out. But he made the trip out there on a cold January night. And we met up and just went to this spot and just sat at the bar and talked for a good 2.5 hours, I think. And like had the kind of conversation that he and I had never had. But even had we had a conversation back in our 20s or even in our 30s, there's no way it would have had the kind of depth and texture that it had when we had that conversation in January 23. So we got deep with it, man. Like, we were just authentic, talking to one another about what we've been through. This is what life was like. Yeah. Back when you knew me in the 90s, you didn't even know this was going on with me. And he's telling me the same thing about him. And it was just such a great conversation to be a part of. We even had the bartender as a part of the conversation. Remember that?
Yes, he
like,
was.
He's making drinks,
Right.
he's coming up and he's sharing things like, man, the stuff y'all are doing, what you're talking about. Another patron was like, this is the kind of thing that people need to hear. So we're hearing that in the moment. And I just look at Jay and I'm like, man, these are the kind of conversations that Black men at our age should be having with one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that enough. And there are lots of reasons that kind of get into it. So I mentioned it to him. And again, I'm about to turn it over to him in a second, but him being the entrepreneurial spirit that he is, started to develop a vision from there, and it just kind of took off. So there's a whole lot of process that went between then and when Quest came in. But Jay, I'm gonna toss it to you for a second.
Well, let me ask you a question for just one moment, Chris, before we cut back to Jay. I want to ask you what do you feel that you were going through at that point that allowed you to even want to have a conversation that would go in depth enough to getting to this point? What kind of was going on with you around that time that even allowed you to kind of say, you know what, Jay, you're right, let's do this?
Yeah. Wow. Man, that's $1 million question right there. So I think that year, 2023. So again, I was saying my youngest was playing volleyball. So my wife and I, Janine, we got 2 daughters. One graduated from undergrad in 22, and now she's in her first year of law school after a couple years working. She's paying for it on her own.
Yeah.
As a parent, you want your kids to get off the payroll at some point. Pat on the back, because we were able to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
But then our youngest one at the time, she was a senior in high school, and Janine and I, we started to talk about it. Like, we knew that we really liked each other, or we knew that we really loved each other. We weren't necessarily sure that we liked each other at that point, like after a couple of decades raising kids with each other and doing whatever. And I kind of say that in jest, but I think we were both really nervous about what was going to happen when Avery went off to college. Like, that was going to be something new to us. When she and I got married, we got married in August of 99. And by October, November that same year, she's walking around getting sick. We realized she's pregnant. We're like, oh my gosh. So we had a child at the end of our very first year of being married.
Wow.
So we, like, after 2 months of being married, and that was the first time we'd ever lived together. After those couple of months, like, we've been parents, or like worried about what it would be like to be parents, and then being parents for all of that time. That's suddenly going to be gone. How is this going to be? So I think I was already in a pretty intensely reflective mood for myself, just trying to figure out what comes next. I think professionally, I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I love what I do. I love where I am. But at the same time, I don't think this is going to sustain me professionally forever. So I'm also starting to get into that mode, like what comes next, and all of that together. So Jay, he's going to have to tell you about where he was.
Yeah, Jay, start from there, though. Start from there. Start from this last question and then go into how you envisioned the 40/50 Club. But start from what was going on with you at this point that led you to even having this conversation with Chris around the 40/50 Social Club.
Yeah, no, man. CJ, you even telling the story is taking me back to that moment, and I'm up here like, man, it kind of like Back to the Future almost. And so I'm up here thinking it through. But honestly, man, I was at a point in my life where I was unraveling and I needed somebody to talk to. We talked about unraveling in our last episode, but I was maybe at the beginning of my unraveling, and it was feeling funky, man. It was feeling really uncomfortable for me. And I didn't really have a lot of people that I could talk to. Of course, I got a lot of people I could talk to, but at the same time, CJ and I have always had this kind of mentor-mentee relationship because of our age slightly being different. Like, I always revered in him kind of like a mentor. Like, I looked up to him in terms of how he was as a husband and a father, and but still a cool, dude. Still was, still the same CG I remember back, 25 years ago. So it was like, I can have these conversations with CJ and not feel like I should feel insecure about it. And sometimes as Black men, when we have vulnerable conversations, other Black men may make us feel insecure because they're insecure about having the conversation. So I think CJ just kind of was that open, friend vessel for me to be like, I can have this conversation. That's why I was like, I don't care where you at, bro. I will drive for you. I was seeking him. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I didn't really have a lot of friendships here that I could really get that touch from outside of just getting on the phone. And
Right.
sometimes when you unraveling, you need to touch somebody and have an up close conversation versus just connecting with them on the phone, if that makes sense. And that's really what drew me to us having that union there. And then the conversation just evolved,
Right. Okay.
because I was able to talk about what I was going through at the time, work wise, entrepreneurially, relationship wise, things that CJ had been through. And I was like, man, am I going in the right direction? Am I even doing
Yeah.
this right? You know what I'm saying? Like, why
Hmm.
do I feel this way? Like you said, it was emotional. I'm up here crying, and we going through all these different emotions. And I was just like, man, there's something here. I didn't quite know what it was, but it was a feeling of, I know if I need this right now, then I'm sure somebody else does. And we just started talking about it. And then it was like, we started thinking about our age and everything like that. And that's just
Hmm.
how it started to brew.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Man, that's
Yeah.
good. So now you started talking about that. Y'all started y'all intro. I mean, is it a reintroduction in some case? Huh.
Man, it,
Go
that's a great question, man. It's like, we always have been a part of each other's lives because we share
Hmm.
a wider friend base, that
Hmm.
stays connected, on a daily basis via text messages and a group chat and things like that. But still, inside of that, it was a reconnection because now it was like we're having deeper conversation one on one,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and the conversations that we found ourselves having, we don't necessarily have in that broader group for
Hmm.
various reasons. So it was like I found myself reaching out to CJ more because it was a safe space that was created. I felt
Hmm.
safe. I felt heard, and I didn't feel as though, some people call it, I didn't feel like I was a simp or a punk, or I should feel like just because I'm connecting with my feminine masculine, I should feel bad about it. Like all those things, kept drawing me to wanting to dig deeper into our reconnection. So I think it was a reconnection.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Chris, when you think about this reconnection now, you all went and you all started doing things. Tell me a little bit more about like what you all started doing after this connection. Tell me
Right.
kind of like how that started to really shape a little bit of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I still remember what that was like because it was something that we used to do during the daytime, and it
Hmm.
would be it was either a Monday or a Tuesday morning, 8:30 my time. We're
Yeah.
connecting via Zoom with one another, and we didn't really know exactly what it was going to be. It was like let's just start. And I remember when we had the initial conversation, it was like we don't know how this is going to look yet, but just pump energy in that direction, and something will materialize from a faith perspective. I know that's just kind of where I exist. I know where he exists in that sense.
Yeah.
So we started doing this every week. And it started when it first started, we weren't hitting record. We were just like, hey, let's have a convo. What do we think we need to do? How we're going to do it?
Wow.
Eventually he got to all right, I'm hitting record on this. At the moment that happened, I remember being like, I don't even know what to say
I
now.
do
And like
remember
I
that. I
started
remember
getting
that.
real formal
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and
I
I
remember that.
recognized that we needed to grow through some of that as well. Like, let's have a couple episodes that wind up
Yeah.
being
Yeah. Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we started doing this and just, we got content. Like, it's got to be hours and hours and hours of content that we're never really going to use probably at this point. But I look at it though, and I think it was all practice. It was all practice to kind of get us here to be feeling as comfortable as we're feeling, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Jay, you're
Man,
practicing, the content is coming up, and you guys are
yeah.
having this 8:30 in the morning thing going on, and you must have at that point in time really been saying to yourself, this might actually do something. So
Yeah.
when did you
Right.
finally realize for yourself that this needed to to reach men in their 40s and 50s? When did you really see that like this was it?
Yeah, it's the saying something to the point of like where your energy flows, like things start to evolve and come. And I felt like I started meeting more black men who
Mhm.
wanted to have the conversation. And I think that's how you and I met. Like
Yeah, yeah.
we you know what I'm saying? Like it's like we reached a point where it was like, okay, we having this conversation, but like, okay, I wanted to bring somebody else in. I felt like we needed to bring in another person because I'm like, okay, we need to span across 40 and 50, right? We don't want to just be like a small subset of it because we were both like in our later 40s, early 50s. And I'm like, dang, who can I tap into that's much younger, but still in their 40s? And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I was connected with you. And I
Yeah.
remember when we had got connected, the first things we had started talking about was like a podcast situation.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that thing started brewing a little bit. And
Yeah.
like, we hadn't hung out a whole lot, but it was something
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was a genuine appreciation for the other person, and it was like, okay, let's see if this has something.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, here, let me ask something
And
then though too.
yeah,
And I hate to interrupt here, but I want to
yeah, yeah,
find this out because,
yeah,
as we're talking about this, I just remember one day Jay was like, "Hey, what you think about bringing in someone else?" And my reaction was like, "Hey, if you really think somebody's gonna be good for us, I trust you. Like, let's do it." But tell
Yeah.
us how, because I didn't realize that you all didn't know each other that long before this happened. So tell
yeah.
No.
us more about that. Like, how long did you all know each other before you decided to ask him about this? And what was it that made you think, here's a perfect person to come in here as a third?
Man, that's a great question. I don't know. We probably knew each other maybe, a year, like our,
Yeah.
significant
Yeah,
others
it's probably
or
like a
friends
year.
and things like that. And so like, we connected through that way. But then like
Mhm.
we just kind of always kept a pulse on each other. And then we like, when Quest was coming to town, we would like at least touch base. We would at least be like, look, if we can't see each other, let's at least talk or whatever the case
It's
may
so
be.
funny. He's saying come into town, but I was living in Chicago.
Yeah,
I was never, never in Chicago. I was never home. I was
he
never
was
home.
never home.
But
He was
but when I
always
would
flying
come back
somewhere.
home, I say, Jake, let's try to get up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Let's try to do something.
yeah,
And we would get up and kind of just build from there.
yeah. And I remember it was one time we had went to go grab some lunch or something or early dinner, and
Yes.
like we was just like, let's do this, man. Let's see where this
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
We were down on in the West Loop, and I think we were at Fulton
Yep, Fulton Market.
and
Yep.
yeah, Fulton Market, and we was in there, and it was one of the greatest talks
Yeah,
that I feel that we've had. And
yeah,
from there, he was just like, I got this other guy that's already doing this with me, blah, 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 blah. What do you think about doing a podcast? We'll talk about, guys in our age range. And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Definitely down. Yeah.
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 So
It was good to
it was go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it was good to be able to understand that somebody saw me in that light, and to be able to come in, like into y'all's space that y'all had already created. I appreciate y'all definitely. I thank y'all for just allowing me to be part of this and allowing me to, be able to share just some of my, views. I would put it like that. I think that's more or less
Yeah,
what it.
I think it's been interesting, man, because we started doing this piece, and then Quest came into the fold, and every phase of it has been like you know this whole transformation, like coming together, and then finally filling each other out and then congealing in ways, and then you
Hmm.
blossom, and then it's coming together again, and then congealing. I feel like it's been this
Yeah.
constant thing of coming together and congealing because there's been moments where it's been like, are we gonna do this, y'all, or
Yeah.
or like it would go kind of cold for a while, or people's schedules just
Yeah.
wouldn't align, and then we couldn't
Yeah.
really keep the momentum, and then but I promised myself and I'm promising y'all, I'm like, this time we gonna hold it.
Yeah.
Like it's like I feel so good about it that I'm like, we gonna hold it and we gonna take this thing by the reins and really, really see where this thing can go. And I just really am excited about what this can be, you know? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I am
yeah.
too. I'm happy that we got a chance to at least briefly talk a little bit into what, has been created here. I know that we definitely are going to go further into that and definitely speak more about that in episodes to come. But before we depart, I do have a couple of more questions for you both. And it's more around where you feel that this show is going to place your legacy. When you
Mm,
think about now, you are on the stage. It's formidable, right? It is in a space that we call the interwebs, the internet, the metaverse, if you want to say in some ways. Where do you find a place for legacy?
I'm gonna share one thing, and then Jay, if you have a thought, feel free to jump in after that, and you can start to
sure,
share, or I can keep
sure,
going. We'll see.
sure.
One of the things that I'm sure has come up with the three of us at certain points, I'm into something I call them signs and synchronicities, where it's
Mm.
just coincidences. There are a whole bunch of things that just start to happen. And it used to be that I would question, like, wow, there's a coincidence
Yeah.
here and here and here. There are three
Yes.
things. What's about to happen? I'm at a point right now where these periods happen where it happens so often that I don't really question them anymore. I just
Yep.
know that it's portending something big that's about to happen.
Mhm.
So the moment you just started talking about legacy, where it took my mind is I work at a school, I work at a high school out here, and in dealing with our sophomores, we're helping them right now to plan their curricula for their junior and even to some degree their senior years. And as we're having that conversation, what I get into first is just about them as a student, how sophomore year going, that whole thing. But there's a question I ask of them, which is 2.5 years from right now, they're going to be
Yeah.
walking across that stage at graduation. When they're doing that, what do they want their legacy to be? How do they want to be remembered? So again, I'm literally asking people that question earlier today, and then you just came up
Yeah.
with that. Sign and synchronicity, I don't know if it's big, I don't know if it's small, but there's so many that are happening that I just kind of know that I'm there. But it's so interesting that I ask kids that question, knowing I'm going to trip them up a little bit. But now you're tripping me up by asking me the exact same thing. So I can get Jay, what's your answer to that?
Man, as I was thinking about when he said it to me, legacy, there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is, we create the lives that we want to live. And so this is a platform I believe that's going to help me help someone else materialize that and see it through because I'm still working on that. But I'm like, why not have a forum that allows people to see me in my cocoon until I reach my butterfly phase fully for myself, right? I see that
Yeah.
as a space, but I also see like this interesting space, man, like kind of like leaving a legacy. We got the barbershop for men, we got a salon for women, but there's something in the middle
Mm.
that I believe that should exist for a man that allows him to experience both his masculine and feminine in ways that are healthy and healthful for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
so I
you
feel
know what
like,
that's called, Jay? You
yeah,
know what that's called? It's
what's
called the
it called?
strip club.
It's called what? Wait, what is it? It's called what? I missed
It's
that.
called it's called the strip club.
You stupid, man. That is what for above it. I guess if you say that, that is what for above it.
Oh,
But you
yeah,
know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
I'm
Like,
playing.
no,
Yes,
it's
I
all
do.
good. It's all good.
It
But
is. It is
I
that
feel
middle
like
part. That
it's
middle
that
part.
middle part trying to
I hear
figure
you.
out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see it. I see that as being something that the 40s, 50 social club can do. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
and
yes, yes.
there are two things that I'm gonna come up with right now, and I'm probably gonna
Mhm.
talk about these more times as we go through because they're definitely both of these are part of my motivations just for doing this in general.
Yeah.
And they both involve two guys that went to Kenyon and were in Jamia's class. One of them was this
Okay.
guy Wayne from Zimbabwe. And I'm gonna say something about him. And then the other guy is a guy named Kenyon who went to Kenyon College. And he's actually the person that
Nice.
introduced me. He introduced me to my
Nice.
wife too. So there's a whole story there. I'm gonna start with Kenyon though. So I left there. I went to Williams College out in Massachusetts, graduated from there in '94, went and worked at Kenyon for 2 years in admissions. And then I left right before their senior year. I left to go back
Mhm.
out to Williams to do admissions there. But I would come back to Kenyon when I could. And so it had been several months, and I came back, and we were all hanging out at their place. And I was sitting next to Kenyon, and I can't remember what conversation we were in, but I'll never forget something he said to me. He was like, man, CJ, you got a lot to say, and you don't really share it. And he was saying, I know we were talking about like, what do we think our biggest flaws are? And I don't know how we got into that conversation. I can't remember what I said to him. Maybe he would, but I'll never forget he said that to me. He's like, your biggest flaw is you got a lot to say and you don't really share it. And there are reasons for that I'll probably get into at some point as well. But that's one of those things that stuck with me as I'm coming into this. And then the other one with Wayne, man, like, here's this dude from Zimbabwe coming from this place where he doesn't have a lot of money. And I know how that African life was portrayed to us growing up and what we thought it had to be like for him. So to us, it's like, man, this is a come up. You know, he's coming up here. He's about to change the trajectory of his life. But I had a conversation with him one day. I was like, so Wayne, like, how did you wind up here, though? Like, I understand when they get to the States, but middle of nowhere, little tiny Gambier, Ohio, and you're here and you're playing soccer. Like, how did that happen? And again, something I will never forget. He looked me straight in the eye. He was like, CJ, I didn't care where I was going to land when I got here. I took the best opportunity, but I needed to get here because he said, I am a soldier on a mission to save the African-American mind. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like, whoa. Here I am thinking, we saving this dude. He's looking at me like, brother, you don't know how lost you are. So I think to me, this is one of those things, like those two things are part of the fuel for being here right now. Yeah. Knowing what we know 25, 30 years later, there's too much wisdom in this not to be sharing it. Yeah. And again, trying to encourage that generation coming up behind us. Don't wait so long to do the same thing in the way that it needs to work for you.
Yes. Good.
So, I know you've been, polling all these questions for us. Like, what about you? I'm like,
hey,
go back and can you answer like one or two questions before we sunset for the day? I'm curious, like, what do you think brought you here? How did the universe bring you here? And what are your thoughts in terms of where you see it going and what can become and what legacy you'll fulfill?
Yes.
I feel almost like Chris in a way, and that is that, it's at a point where things are just happening, right? And they're happening because in some ways I am from a standpoint of self orchestrating, the direction of energy now, right? Like it's not a situation of me not understanding the energy. It's that I'm fully aware of the energy. I'm fully aware of the frequency that I am on. And now I am projecting that out. And with it comes all of the love, all of the appreciation, all of the gratefulness, all of the selflessness, because we understand that it will not be anything without community. It will not be anything without us continuing to learn, continuing to be compassionate with each other around what we don't feel that we have and around what actually is for us, right? So you combine all those things and you say to yourself, let's go all in because it's coming my way. And if it's coming my way, regardless of what it is the work through that will get me to the other side. So regardless if it's good or bad or whatever, it's the possibility of being able to learn from it, being able to experience it, being able to have something else to be able to give to not only my sons, but my nephews, my cousins, everyone else, right? Even my mother, right? You should never be too old to want to learn, right? You should always, in some ways, want to think that I can learn something else. And I feel like I want to always learn from you all. I want to always learn from others. And this was that space that I wanted to start a lot of that from, right? Me being 45 now and me thinking of just the last, like I said, if my last 4 or 5 years of my life was the last 45 years of my life, boy, oh, what a time, right? Oh, what a time. So to just be able to come into a space now where in the last 5 years, I have seen both of my sons to finally connect and be the best of friends when they had never seen each other before this, right? Like to be
Wow.
able to have that happen, to be able to, in some ways, find myself where I was in not just lost, but in a space in which was toxic, right? To be able to come from that and to be able to recenter and focus on what values are, what boundaries are, what the principles of being in some ways a human is, not just a man, but a variety of person, a human, right? So,
Yeah.
all of
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
actually has
Mm-hmm.
led me to understand that this podcast and these individuals that I am anchored with are going to allow me to leave a legacy and allow me to learn from legacy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. And
that's what's
you
up.
just inspired me to share something else about it too, because you mentioned the word frequency.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you just saying right there, like we have talked about this, like we really do believe in that. And you
Yeah.
brought together three people who are in the same orbit as one another from a frequency
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What we're
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for
trying to
sure.
do is to grow this. We're trying to grow
Yeah.
this. This is a movement. We're trying to get more people to get involved with this, grow the
Yeah.
magnitude of that frequency, because we see that as one of the potential solutions for everything that currently ails us, right? Like you can't
Hey.
tell me that a nation with strong Black men can't be
Uh,
the best thing that's out
come
there. And
on.
we
Come
know
on.
what we're capable of, and we know how we're falling short. So
You know
why
how
accept the falling short when if we came together for one another, there's something really, really magical that we can
For
mm,
sure.
grow
man.
that
Man.
frequency, you know,
Hey, I'm gonna
see
say
who
this.
resonates with it.
I'm gonna say this. Hip hop ain't no older than us. Right
Uh,
there. Right
uh,
there. Right there says enough. Right? I mean, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into this more with everything that we do, but just from the era of our existence, the creation of things that we in our lifetime have created us. Not even our brothers and sisters, not even our mothers and fathers. I'm talking about us have created for the rest of the world.
yes,
There's a lot
yes,
to talk about. There's a lot
yes.
to talk about.
That's what's up, y'all. All right,
Mm-hmm.
this has been good. This has been good. But we're gonna put a pin in this one because I
Yeah.
think we're gonna let it breathe for a little bit. But thank y'all so much for another episode of the 4050 Social Club. We are the solution. So we are gonna see you all soon, and just take care of yourselves and take care of each other. All right, y'all.
And that's a wrap on another successful and penetrating episode of the 4050 Social Club. We're obviously so glad you joined, and we hope that you found something healthy, affirming, and powerful in today's content. Please help support this movement by liking this video and following us on Instagram and YouTube at 4050.socialclub. We'll see you again next week, same time, same channel, as you work with us in this growing and important community to make these the best years of your best life. Till then.